Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Hindsight Cinema. This year, we're going to be looking at 1984. I'm Joa.
I'm Gary.
And I'm John. I guess technically it is New Year because the last Hindsight Cinema was before Christmas.
A long time ago. Although we'll try and be more than once a year this go round.
Yeah, let me say this. 86 was a difficult year for us when we did it because it was so chock full of movies that were good. Our beloved leader over here, Joa, picked 1984 this time.
Since when is he the leader? I don't remember us voting on that.
I like it.
He picked 1984 this time, and it's even worse because of so many great movies. So, if you don't like our opinion, send us a message and let us know.
So, Hindsight Cinema, and for those of y'all just tuning in for the first time, is where we go back and we pick a year and we look at what was chosen in that year as awards and what was the highest grossing, and then we look and see how that has aged over the so far corresponding decades. We haven't went newer than 86, and this year is definitely one of the more glaring differences, I think. Last year, I believe there were a couple that were obvious would not be anywhere near award worthy, but this go round, I definitely think the award season was taken over by one movie that would not win again if redone. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. I usually like to start these off where we go through kind of the highest grossing of the year without really going over them and just mentioning them.
Don't forget, we also give you our selections on what we think were the best of certain categories.
Yeah, and then once we go through what was actually chosen that year, we're going to go over what we think should have been, how it aged, and what we would do today.
Yeah,
if it was our choice. So the highest grossing film this year was the start of the phenomenon of Eddie Murphy, and that is Beverly Hills Cop 1. Grossed $234 million, which, looking at today, won't even make the top 10.
No.
Yeah.
But Beverly Hills Cop, followed by Ghostbusters, then Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Gremlins, The Karate Kid, Police Academy, Footloose, Romancing the Stone, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, and you heard me say track, not Trek, I apologize, and Splash. I think the biggest takeaway from this list is this is really starting to ramp up the idea of sequels in Hollywood being a norm.
Actually, this is the year that we got a lot of the first run.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And sequels.
You got a couple of big sequels here with Indiana Jones and Star Trek, but the almost every other one on this top 10 list got sequels in the following year or two.
Except for Splash.
And I think this was the year that kind of started all of that.
Yeah.
Becoming the norm. And then really it'd be easy to go over the awards. There were only 4 movies that were given awards in any kind of dominating fashion, and that is Amadeus, The Killing Fields, Passage to India, and Sally Field's Places in the Heart. Those were pretty much won everything but Best Foreign Film for the Academy, and that even won it for the Golden Globes. And this is kind of where I want to begin. This topic is what was actually awarded versus what should it have been. And I'm not even going to start with Amadeus, which, by the way, swept almost everything.
And it's a good movie. Don't get us wrong. It is a really good movie.
But I'm not going to start there. I want to switch and actually start with a category that the Academy did not honor this year, but the Golden Globes did. And I feel like it was such a disservice, I want to mention it.
Okay.
And that is the Golden Globes did comedy or musical as their own category back in this year. And the Academy did not do a comedy or musical as anything special. And going straight back to Best Actor, they chose Dudley Moore in Mickey and Maude on the same year that Best Actor could have went to Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop for a comedy,
Bill Murray,
or
Ghostbusters,
Bill Murray,
or
Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
Like,
The guy that plays Egon.
or let me go ahead and tell you who they picked for the Best Female. The movie Romancing the Stone, Michael Douglas. They picked Kathleen Turner for Best Actress.
Well, I don't blame them. She
And
did a fantastic job.
And she deserved it. I'm not going to complain there. But I'm like, you picked Dudley Moore
over Michael Douglas.
Yep.
Now, to be fair, this was his role. This was kind of the beginning of the end for Dudley Moore.
Yeah.
So what are you saying? It was a sympathy vote?
Well, I mean, maybe this was the climax of his career, and therefore he deserved it. I didn't live through this, so I don't know. But this seems such out of character. 25 years later, 35 years later, it's like, first off, who, and then what movie?
Yeah. Well, Dudley Moore was never, in my personal opinion, this is my personal opinion, a top tier actor.
And yeah, and I'm not coming
in his breakout role of Arthur, he was not a top tier actor.
And if you go back and watch this is not coming off of me reading a list of names on who is this. This is horrible. Why would you choose? No, like I went back and watched Mickey and Maude. It is horrible. It is a traditional 80s rom-com that is horrid compared to when you go back and watch Beverly Hills Cop. And yeah, there's tropes in Beverly Hills Cop, but the humor is still very much viable.
Well, even rom-coms back then weren't all bad. John Cusack had a run of rom-coms that were fantastic movies. Romancing
the Stone was a rom-com. But I mean, of the 80s tropes of romance comedies, this one was right up there with, although this was early 90s, but this is right up there with Joe and the Volcano. Like, I mean, it was that level of...
Wow, now I feel old.
Yeah, this is just not a good movie. It does not hold up well. Unlike switching back to the obvious topic in this is going to be Amadeus. Amadeus was good. Definitely the
this goes back to
epitome of that.
This goes back to the whole thing about the Academy Awards not looking for anything other than very serious films.
Yeah,
in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. And this is a prime example of it. I mean, Murray Abrams did a wonderful job, and I pluraled that due to JJ. He did a wonderful job, and I think he's a wonderful actor, and he has held up this whole time. You watch him now, and he's just as pleasant to watch on screen as he was back then. But I will tell you though, watching this, whoever did his makeup in that movie
did a fantastic job.
Fantastic job. And you might think I'm crazy, but go watch the beginning of Amadeus. He starts off as an old man, and a priest has come to visit him because he's confessed to killing Mozart, and so and try to kill himself. So he's in a psychiatric ward.
That's a serious thing going up to.
Yeah, and so the priest is coming to try and get him to confess to killing Mozart, who, by the way, in reality did not die of murder, supposedly. And this guy did not supposedly kill him, so there's a little bit of fiction.
Although there was a rivalry between the two characters.
There was.
In real life.
So there's a little bit of leeway being taken here with the truth, but when they show him, they've had to age him up because it's the end of his life. And I gotta admit, his aging looked amazing. And compared to today's CG and today's makeup abilities, whoever did this makeup, now that's an Academy Award.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Well, in my personal opinion, I think it's the leeway that causes Amadeus not to be, in our opinion, the number one film that everybody else thought it was. If it had been a actual about Amadeus's life and rivalry with this character, it probably would have been a whole lot better.
And I think that while we might actually have some difference in opinions of what deserves an Academy Award, that what you just said is probably the most real and honest traction we would get with anybody that actually was of importance that would be making this decision.
Yeah, I
was,
don't disagree.
Was that today, if this movie was made today, it would not take the liberties that it took.
No.
It would find a way to tell the story.
Oh Lord, no, it wouldn't take anywhere near as many.
And it would be a better movie for it. It really would.
It really would.
You look at the other movies that have come out, whether it be Lincoln or any of the other character studies that you had. You had the Kennedy movie that was out.
And we're not talking documentary. We're talking about a movie based on someone's life that is as true to their life as you can get without making it a documentary.
Yeah, because if you took and gave it the treatment of Lincoln and put, say, Day-Lewis playing Amadeus, and
Really?
he had the character chops of perfection being there but not being perfection. You can see it. It's there. The once in a lifetime, once in a millennia ability shows up, and you're right next to it. You're able to compare day in, day out your ability, their ability, your ability, their ability, and I think that struggle would be something that we have seen in many movies, and two would the setting would give this a great
this was
chance for someone like Day-Lewis or someone else taking off.
Makeup and costume probably carried this movie further than the script did.
And
I'd agree with that.
And I'll tell you, while this did not win our made up category, which, by the way, this whole series started because me and Gary made up a category that we think is more important than Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor. It's Best Ensemble. And this movie didn't win my Best Ensemble, and I assume it didn't win your alls either.
Nope.
No.
But it could have. Everybody that was in this movie was fantastic and went on to have careers outside of this movie. And I think that is a definition of
Best Ensemble. Yeah,
they don't have to be famous when they went into this movie, but what they did afterwards
made a difference.
And this movie, it's full of people, even people who aren't, due to legal issues, necessarily
still acting.
Acting, but definitely were famous at the time and famous afterwards, and maybe they torpedoed their career, but still, it was a good movie. So I say all that too. It did not win, I have a feeling, any of our categories.
No, it did not.
But
it did get an honorable mention from me, which is on my list here as honorable mentions. It did get an honorable mention from me because I do honestly feel like it was a good movie. Might have even bordered on great movie, but there have been a lot of those that bordered on great that just didn't make it. And for the longest time, I toyed with it being my top movie, but it wasn't. It didn't turn out to be.
Yeah. Me neither. It didn't wind up in my top anything.
So let's move on to what we did do. Honorable mention on the rest of the categories. Sally Field did a wonderful job in Places in the Heart. A very touching movie that needs to be remade today. 100% out of all the movies that I've dealt with in this year, that movie needs to be remade.
Okay, we're not going to get off on topic of who we would get to play the part.
No. But the premise of the story, if you haven't seen it, the premise of the story is a sheriff is called to a disturbance on a train tracks, that a black man has a gun. Shows up, it's a black boy who has a gun, who, when the sheriff tries to arrest him or stop him, shoots the sheriff and kills him. And then the town ends up lynching the boy.
And if I'm not mistaken, Sally Fields plays the sheriff's wife. And then, so
the movie is her and her kids dealing with all this, and then what this does to the town. And the whole movie is amazing. The ending is amazing. You'll find it on YouTube because it's a very touching ending. I just, out of all the movies that deserves a remake, this one this year is if we were going to pick a remake, this would be it.
Unfortunately, they remade one of my movies and it didn't turn out so well. We'll discuss that when it comes time.
All right, so I think most of that is good. If you're a fan of The Newsroom, you will find Killing Fields is a nod that they made there with Charlie. But other than that, I think we should just move on to our
picks.
Our picks.
Yeah.
Which one should we start with?
You pick the one you want to start with, and we'll chime in if we've got something for that category, because we don't always have the same categories.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, because
I have quite a few this time.
I'm doing best comedy because this one struck a chord with me. I think it's a category that should be pulled out separate because you will never get an Academy that's willing to pick a comedy over a drama.
No.
So, best comedy, Beverly Hills Cop.
Really?
Really?
You shocked me because I thought you were going to go the other way.
I did not.
I guarantee you it shows up somewhere in your list.
Yes, it does. Best comedy, Beverly Hills Cop. I think not only did it start a franchise that people are still hoping gets sequels now, it was a minority cop in a film that had nothing to do with any of that, and just growing up.
It was a good, happy
growing
film.
up.
Yeah.
It was an idolizing, man, I want to be like as smooth as Axel.
Axel Foley.
Yeah.
I grew up listening to its soundtrack, which I still own to this day and is in my car and the CD. I just this movie I've quoted. There are a handful that I quote my whole life. Two of them were in this year, and I kind of was taken back that they were both the same year. The other one, which did not win any category for me, but it was close, and that was The Karate Kid, which really is one of the more important movies to me growing up. And if there had been more than the 3 or 4 people that were central to the story in this movie, it probably would have won ensemble any other year. But this year, another one took it, which we'll get to later.
Okay, John, what is your comedy?
Ghostbusters.
I can't argue with that.
I'm
not going to argue with that.
It's hard to say. Bill Murray is still one of the big guns in comedy. I mean, just it's been a few years, but I mean, still in Zombieland, So
yeah.
And he just did a new one.
With Wes Anderson.
Yeah, it's a zombie one.
I'm looking for. Is it out yet? Did it actually come out yet?
I don't know if it's
out yet.
At the time of recording, it's close. If it's not out, and it's got the guy that's famous for everything right now. They've got him playing in Star Wars and everything else.
Yeah.
He plays the new Vader. What's his name?
Don't call him the new
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren.
Yeah, don't call him the new Vader.
Yeah, he's definitely not the new Vader.
No, but anyway, so there's a lot of good stuff. I'm actually looking forward to seeing Wes Anderson's take on a zombie movie. I figure it's got to be pretty good.
My comedy is so obscure that I had to go to number 250 on IMDb's list from 86 to December 31st of 86.
Buckaroo Banzai.
Nope. It's a movie called Party Animal, and if you've never seen it, you need to find it, you need to watch it. It is hilarious. The premise, real quick, young man comes to college.
For the record, actually, we were all wrong. I just looked it up, and apparently the movie's called The Dead Don't Die, and it came out on the 14th.
Okay.
So, correction, it is in fact out. We're just idiots.
It's been out 10 days now, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, Party Animal, the premise, real quick, is that this guy goes to college. He literally arrives at college on a turnip truck.
Oh,
Never had sex. His best friend that he makes at college is the Don Juan, has women every time he turns around, a different woman, and so forth and so on. And he tries to teach the young man how to pick up women. It is hilarious. It is so funny. You have got to watch it if you've never seen it. It's called Party Animal. I don't even think that anybody in it went on to do anything else, but it was a great movie.
okay.
I don't even think that shows up on Wikipedia as a release for that year.
Congratulations.
As I'm sitting here,
Like I said,
Flipping
it was number
through it.
250 something, I think, on IMDb's list. So
All right.
You managed to pick something so obscure even Wikipedia doesn't know about it.
it literally does not.
Of course, to be fair, I've done that with IMDb. So
yeah,
Yeah, well, and it does for the older years. It does say notable releases. So
yeah.
I think it was or wide releases and then notable. And I think it's admitting that it's not a full list.
Yeah. But it did release in 1986.
So,
And it was there.
Gary, what other category do you got?
Best sci-fi.
Oh, well, that's
Dune.
I'm right there with you. That's my choice too.
I was gonna say Terminator, but the reason that I didn't is because they did way more world building for Dune.
Frank Herbert did it when he wrote the book.
Anyway, the point is there's way more world building sunk into it. They have caste systems, they have demographics, they have wars, they have planets, they have minerals on the stinking planet for crying
Yeah.
out. And then in Terminator, don't get me wrong, I enjoy the Terminator's movies immensely, especially the other ones where it was not this whole big complex the still line from Doctor Who timey-wimey thing going on. It was literally just there's an alien or there's a cyborg robot thing from the future here to murder you. I'm supposed to keep you alive. Run away. That was literally it.
And Dune is the one I was talking about that they did a remake of that was not nearly as good as the 1986 release.
another one's coming. But I'm picking.
Wait, what? There's another one coming? Oh, good lord.
It's supposed to be a remake that sticks to the book, 100%.
That does not comfort.
But anyway, I picked the Terminator for sure. The only thing that comes close for me is Red Dawn, and
I wouldn't count Red Dawn as a sci-fi
I wouldn't count
movie.
Red Dawn as
I'm
a
just
sci-fi movie either.
kind of count it as a futuristic movie, just a post-apocalyptic futuristic movie.
It falls in Red Dawn falls into my honorable mentions category.
But the Terminator for me, I loved the first one, and I kind of feel like that this one was a classic long before the second one made it the world franchise that it is. Just
See, here's the funny part. Because my next category is action, and guess what my choice is? The Terminator. For action movie. What'd you pick for an action movie, John?
Only because up until the fourth one, it held up better than the Terminator did, and it didn't get as convoluted. Indiana Jones, the Temple of Doom.
See, I am in a opinion there that the Temple of Doom only catches crap since the release of The Last Crusade. If Temple of Doom had been made first as an entry point to Indiana Jones, I feel like there would be a lot more love for that movie. And obviously being number 3 in the top grossing, there was a lot at the time it come out anyway. because sequels didn't necessarily make everybody run to the box office.
No,
This is
and
very
then
true.
Sequels still don't. A lot of times, sequels are looked upon as taboo because they just
but they did for a long time.
Yeah.
Starting in this year, it looks like going forward. And honestly, you could probably argue that Terminator 2 did it, where the sequel was by far and large better than the original, in all ways. And Terminator 2 is probably the greatest version of that, other than Star Wars. But they were some of the first, so I'm not counting them. But the Temple of Doom, I feel, is a good choice for an action movie. I personally would pick Karate Kid, but I didn't actually pick one for an action movie. But I didn't actually pick one.
Really?
So what is your next category, Joe?
The only other category I have is my ensemble cast.
Oh, is your ensemble? You don't
Yes.
have an overall either? Who should have won Best Picture in your personal opinion looking back now?
Well, it's the same
fantasy?
one.
Our fantasy one?
No, although Conan the Destroyer was out this year,
And
That's actually my choice.
my choice too.
and I'm not putting it down. I don't think we'll ever see a fantasy category in the awards, so I just didn't.
Oh Lord,
No.
no, we never will. Like the Lord of the Rings was the closest we ever would get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no,
Yeah.
but I'll be honest.
The
Like that was,
Academy-
I know somewhere out there's someone going to give me flack for how can you pick Conan over The Never-Ending Story? And there's a very simple explanation. I don't remember most of The Never-Ending Story except for the fact that the dragon basically looked like a wiener dog with long hair. That was it. It did not say dragon to me. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what explanation they give. Every time I look at it, I'm just like,
See,
that's a
those
flying wiener dog is what that is.
the only of those movies that has nostalgia for me is The Princess Bride.
And technically, it's not
And
I started to say, wasn't it in
anything like
94?
that.
Or wasn't it in
but
84, was it?
no, it wasn't in
I
'84.
started
But
to say, 'cause
but
if
those
I-
style of movies of a kid going off on an adventure.
Yeah, I started to say, if it was, and I messed up, then I'm correcting I'm making
No,
a
no,
change.
it wasn't.
But
Okay.
but that style was something that was popular in the early to mid to late '80s and early '90s, and the only one that really was on it with me was Princess Bride. None of the others really did anything for me as a kid growing up. I just didn't care for them.
Well, I have several more categories. I have a horror category, a cast, which is ensemble category. I've already stated my overall, which should have won Best Picture for me, was Dune. I personally think it was one of the better movies from that year. But it's my horror film and my ensemble that are going to stand out for me, and that's why I saved them to last. My horror film is also an obscure film with a fantastic actor.
See, I could pick one instantly, but it's
Let's
not
hear it.
obscure. Oh, it's not what yours is. Go ahead.
Mine's a Dreamscape
Yeah, no.
with Dennis Quaid,
Yeah.
and fantastic movie.
I haven't seen it in years, but it is a good movie. Horror films are not one of my favorite categories. Now, I will say the early 90s and late 80s were some of the best that I enjoyed because I really liked slasher films.
See,
And-
I don't, because to me, a slasher film is more about the gore they can put on
No,
screen.
that
than
ain't
it
that.
is.
I'm not meaning like. See, that's the newer slasher film. I like the older slasher film where it was more of stealth bad guys that showed up and were killing random people. I don't like the new ones, which are more like the Saw and versions thereof. I don't consider those slasher films. To me, slasher films are Friday the 13th, early Friday the 13th, Jason, Mike Myers, Scream being the last entry into the slasher film franchises.
I like Scream, I have to admit.
I really like Scream. the problem is that I felt there was pressure on the writing towards the end of that series to be more campy, because they thought that was the only way because producers, let me get this straight, producers did not pony up the money unless it got more campy, because of the knockoff Scream movies that were supposed to be campy, funny movies, were so big. And so the very last Scream movie had a lot of funniness in it
that shouldn't have been
there and would never have been there except for producers requiring it.
I would agree with that.
What is your horror film, John Damon?
I'm sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, we're on horror films.
Yeah, I forgot. Nightmare on Elm Street.
That's mine. Like, that would be my pick. That was the first one, was this year. Freddy Krueger is one of my favorites. I think Hellraiser was this year, actually.
I believe
if it wasn't this year, it's next.
Yeah, it might have been.
We got them. We got looking at both years together, but the Freddy Krueger's one of my favorites, if not my favorite, with Ghostface from Scream being right there at second place.
And for me, the special effects in Dreamscape made the movie what it was. It's a fantastic horror film. It is well written, but the special effects made it what it was. Again, my overall movie was Dune. Yours was?
My overall, I actually have to be honest, I went with Temple of Doom.
Also,
I can see that.
I mean, it's probably.
So that's your best picture.
I started. Yeah, overall, that's the one I went with probably.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie, it was really close between it and Ghostbusters. The only reason I didn't do it is because we're just now getting a third Ghostbusters movie. Some of you will call me out on that, but I don't count that other one as a Ghostbusters movie. In fact, I'm pretty sure most of the world doesn't count that as a Ghostbusters movie.
The all-female cast?
We don't talk about it. Just close your eyes.
It's not because they're all female. It's because
it was crap.
It was
a hot, fiery
movie.
ball of crap.
See, my best movie is my ensemble movie.
Really?
And what's your ensemble movie?
My best movie in ensemble is Ghostbusters. I think that
Ghostbusters won my ensemble too, so you're not alone there.
I mean, when you look at, just pull up the 5 names that are on Wiki as the first 5 names for this movie: Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis.
At the risk of sounding wrong, is the one guy he said was that Egon?
Yes.
Okay, because I can never remember that actor's name ever. Save my soul.
Yeah, and then when Ernie Hudson has to be left off for room's sake of your cast, I mean, come on. Ernie Hudson is just a standard of Hollywood. I couldn't imagine. And we live in an area where he's actually willing to travel to, so he's been to a lot of cons in our area, and I love it because he's awesome. But I mean, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, I just can't believe it. And Rick Moranis is, he had a bit part in that movie, but he is a blockbuster comedian who walked out of Hollywood when his wife passed away.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you have to respect that and realize he walked out of being elite. I mean, he had movies like Ghostbusters, Little Shop of Horrors, Spaceballs, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, The Flintstones, Parenthood. I mean, he killed it for all of the late 80s and early 90s, and just gone and refuses to come back. And he's like your 4th or 5th Bill.
Yeah.
To me, it going back and watching, and when you watch it today, it just holds up. I only didn't give it best comedy because I take it more serious than that. It's not a comedy movie. It's a funny movie, but it's not a comedy. I
kind of disagree with you.
It's just it's as comedy movie as much as any of like today's Wes Anderson movies or comedy movies. They're kind of comedy, but they're just observations of people that happen to be in this one sheriffs that fight zombies, in this one Ghostbusters that fight ghosts. But if you look at it, what's going on in the movie is they're broke, unemployed, and trying to get laid, and that's what's going on in the movie. And it just happens to be ghosts or the backdrop, or they're the reason they're all together, but not the purpose of the movie. Unlike the second one, the ghosts are the purpose of the movie. I mean, it's 100% flop, and that's fine. It's not a bad follow up either, but this one I took more serious than a comedy, so I didn't give it the sweep.
I can understand that.
Well,
I still say it's a comedy, so
my ensemble, our cast, or whatever you want to call it, John Daniels already mentioned Buckaroo Banzai. Fantastic film. I love it.
We'll let you talk
Of course,
about that.
I am the
I
Buckaroo Banzai fan. And you're talking about Peter Weller, Jeff Goldblum, Ellen Barkin, Clancy Brown, John Lithgow. I can't think of the guy's name that played Dr. Emmett Brown now. But that's just part of the list of people that show up in this movie.
And yet there's almost no one on earth that knows what this movie is.
But
it's a Mel Brooks movie. It has a cult following.
Yeah,
that's loud and strong, especially in Hollywood. But
maybe this is showing my age, because this would probably be,
it's absolutely showing your age,
my year for movies and obscure movies at that. So, like I said, maybe it's showing my age, but
it's absolutely showing
Buckaroo Banzai is my choice. Since I'm probably the only one that has a whole lot of honorable mentions, I'm going to go ahead and jump in here.
Go right ahead.
We've already talked about Amadeus and Red Dawn.
Yep.
Top Secret, another great comedy, little obscure. Val Kilmer, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's hilarious. Footloose, you just can't go wrong with that version of Footloose. And finally, for me, honorable mentions. Joe has already talked about it being one of the top grossing movies, I think, or he mentioned it somewhere along the way. Romancing Stone.
Love that movie.
Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner. You cannot go wrong with that movie.
When he pulls up, well, I don't want to spoil the movie, because I guarantee you most people that would ever listen to this has not seen it.
And the sequel is just as good as the first one.
Just as good. And the sequel has Gossett Jr. in it.
Yeah.
And because this one doesn't, right? It's the sequel. It's the sequel that's got Gossett Jr. in it. Which any movie, he's like Ernie Hudson. You put him in a movie, and you automatically made the movie better.
He did Iron Eagle, and it actually made a decent movie because of him. So,
They Live is that it? They Live.
They Live with Rowdy Piper.
Right, the greatest fist fight scene ever put on TV on big screen.
I think there's people that would argue that, and I think they have grounds too.
No, the realistic fight scene.
It was a realistic fight scene.
Two guys that were so mad at each other, they were going to beat each other till one of them was unconscious. And it's just, I have broke fights up like that. It's realistic.
It's
so vibe.
I mean, you can have more flashy fight scenes on screen. And they have had more flashy fight scenes on screen. But this is more realistic than any fight scene there was. And we're getting into another year, but that's beside the point.
So double check, make sure we didn't miss anything. We did sci-fi.
We did sci-fi.
We did action.
We did action.
Horror. Comedy. We did our best ensemble.
We did.
We did fantasy.
We did.
For what there was. I have on here on my notes to do animated, but then I realized I marked it out because there isn't really any animated movies in 1984.
Not for the U.S.
No, there's really not. That's I'm just kind of curious here, real quick, just to. quick.
But I do want to go over a few that, Footloose is one we didn't touch on, but
I got it in my honorable mention.
Yeah.
Kevin Bacon, it's a classic to American film,
It is.
and
The guy that
And your pelvic sorcery.
follows him through the school, dancing with him and everything.
I mean,
Oh.
it's beyond a classic, and is worth mentioning. Police Academy started here, and
The first one was the best one. I'm sorry.
but I mean it was, you can't mention 80s and comedies without Police Academy, National Lampoon, Animal House. I mean, you've got just some craziness.
I stand corrected. Thanks to the power of Google, I have found the best animated movie
Of
of 1984.
And that was?
It's Flash Beagle, Charlie Brown.
Okay.
Based on the cover and the name, I can only assume it is a musical. Yeah, according to the thing here, it is literally supposed to be just basically,
Flashdance.
yeah, basically just Snoopy is like, the whole movie is about Snoopy dancing. So there you go.
Probably is the best animated film.
There you go. There you go. That automatically wins my number one.
Going through other, you've got John Hughes' 16 Candles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I could have went down
Never saw that one.
and made a whole. You never saw 16 Candles?
Not to the best of my
Breakfast
memory.
Club is more popular, but 16 Candles is right there with it.
16 Candles is a fantastic movie. It is a rom-com,
It's like
so it's
Breakfast
not
Club
up
I've
your...
seen.
Breakfast
rom-coms
Club,
is
Fast
not
Time
up
at
your thing.
Ridgemont High.
Yeah.
16 Candles is the trio. That's the trio of the three right there.
Gotcha.
If you want to know 80s and 70s, late
Rom-coms.
70s, that's it. Teenage life at its best, that's it in the 80s. Gremlins, which we talked about, to me that was a close second on horror movies. I really liked Gremlins, and the first one was by far the best of all of those.
Agreed. Although you have to admit there were some good scenes in the one in the high-rise building.
Yeah.
Especially like when the one turns into a part bat and it shows his shadow on the wall. It's Batman's symbol. So there are some good ones.
The Karate Kid is just always
Phenomenal
worth mentioning
film.
again.
It's
And you know the
definitely
sad
worth
part about that?
it. None of us mentioned it as anything other than an honorable mention.
None of us mentioned it as anything other than honorable mention, except Joe said it would have been his ensemble. The second thing about that, even when they went to Hillary, was it Hillary? No.
Yeah, it was Hillary.
Hillary Swank.
It was Swank. That's
Hillary
the-
Swank.
It wasn't.
It was the
wasn't
one that
her,
did
no.
the boxing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hillary Swank. Even when they went to her as the next Karate Kid or whatever you want to say, it still held
Oh, because of
its
Pat.
value. Yeah.
Pat Morita. I mean,
Yeah.
I
And the writing was good through all the films.
yep,
Um,
really good.
I don't agree with some of the martial arts moves they came up with, such as the little drum. Martial art move.
Remember Miyagi's family secret technique.
I think the new Karate Kid remake with Jackie Chan went on to explain that this guy's just messed up. This is not all Asian people. This is not all Asian martial arts people.
Yeah.
This is just, Mr. Miyagi is not straight in the head.
Yeah.
And they do show that he's dealing with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
For the 80s, him crying and sipping sake when he's by himself and doesn't... That's a lot of character development for an 80s,
For
what
an
amounts
80s.
to an 80s teens movie.
Yeah.
And they went much farther in the new Karate Kid, and I liked that. It also makes it a little less racist when you realize, then this isn't Asian people. This is literally just Mr. Miyagi being weird.
And of course, let us make the statement here. It's called The Karate Kid. It's Jackie Chan. That's Kung Fu, not karate.
And they understand. They just didn't want to leave the namesake.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to make that argument, you can also make the argument that so many people make that frickin' the guy that
I just
was
want to know if they
fighting-
made it Kung Fu Kid.
was
time.
fighting Daniel.
Was fighting Daniel-san.
There's so many people that always say he was the real Karate Kid. Daniel-san didn't even know karate, and he violated the rules. Daniels. There's so many people that talk about that. They even made a thing on with a show, How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, I know.
Where he talks about it. Which, by the way, apparently this thing is doing really well on, I think, Netflix?
His show,
Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
apparently.
Oh, it's YouTube Red, believe it or not.
Oh, is it?
And it is
I knew I'd seen it
phenomenal.
somewhere. I just couldn't remember what it was.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yo, it's absolutely amazing.
No, it starts off with, first off, it follows the bad guy, right? The bad, quote unquote, bad guy.
Yeah, who at the end of the movie realizes he was wrong.
Yeah, and it kind of, Daniel doesn't become a bad guy, but Daniels went a long way to put it behind him. It was children's fights,
Right.
children's stuff. It's behind him.
Right.
And this guy, it wasn't just the fight. His whole life fell apart, and not because he lost a karate tournament. Just the only structure in this kid's life was that. And when his master sensei lost it, he spiraled down just as much as Sensei did, and he never recovered.
Yeah.
And Danielson went on to be not rich, but went on to be successful, and it's dealing with that. And then they just jump right back into this bickering battle with each other, to the point that they force their students. One is Danielson's kid, and the other is the guy's top student, where they force them to fight their battles. It's an excellent series. Season 2 is out. I can't remember, but I seen the previews for it. It looks good too. We're almost done though. I wanted to continue touching on a few others. The last one I left at was The Last Starfighter. I gotta mention it.
Oh gosh, that is such a good movie.
It's very good. It is.
Daniel has a different opinion, I think.
I don't have a different opinion.
It's
Yes,
really
you guys,
good.
it's in your face.
I don't have a different opinion.
It takes advantage of the arcade culture that was a huge part of the 80s.
Yes, it was.
And it's possibly the best on-screen, just having fun with that part of that culture.
Spoiler alert, the arcade thing is coming back because there's a lot of people getting those custom cabinets that have like
I can't believe those are
10
taken
billion
off.
games.
There's 3. Well, no, the ones at Walmart only have like 5-10 games tops
Well,
on
see,
them.
what people are doing is they're either just getting the cabinet and then installing their own tech, or they're hacking those and then just downloading emulators for
Yeah,
it on
which,
their own.
which we've been doing since the early '90s. But the when you had to mount a full size PC inside of them,
Yeah.
but I just $300 seems like a lot. Buy a piece of MDF board. One board will make it for $55 and cut it out with a router. And
But you got to find the decals and everything else.
yeah, I don't know. The only one that about got me was the Mortal Kombat one, because it came with like 4 of the Mortal Kombats on it. But I just don't have any faith in the joystick being worth anything, so that's why.
Eventually, it's going to give out, and you're going to be stuck with a cabinet that just keeps going.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat,
I know.
at random moments.
To be fair, that's probably still worth some money, but not $300.
Fair, joystick's not that hard to fix.
So, another movie that I have to mention, or my fiance will leave me at some point. Purple Rain come out this year,
Oh Lord.
and
You can say Lord if you want to.
yes, I have to go with Derry on this, where he's going with it.
It's a good
It's
movie.
a good movie, and to a lot of people, it's right up there with the epitome of '80s movies. Like it really touched a lot of people because it had a story. It
did.
really had a
did.
real story to it. Possibly,
And I was surprised at how well he did as an actor.
yeah.
If you're wondering who we're talking about Prince.
Prince.
The late, great Prince. As an actor, he really surprised a lot of people in that movie.
That'd be what the little guy from the Dr. Pepper commercials is based off of.
Yeah.
Too young to know who Prince is exactly. Red Dawn, which we mentioned, Patrick Swayze.
Yeah.
Pretty much anything he was in was worth mentioning. Jennifer Grey, might I add, this is possibly her second
movie.
second favorite famous movie, and possibly her last famous movie.
Actually, she did one back in the 90s or early 2000s.
I can't remember what it
that
was.
very. Leah Thompson, I think, was in that movie,
Mm-hmm.
Red Dawn, and she, for those of you that don't remember her, she played the mom in Michael J. Fox's Back to the Future.
And just a couple more here I want to touch on. Of course, the Terminator, which we've
talked about.
talked
Some
about,
others had
and
category winners and such.
the Night Patrol. I wanted to mention that one, but it's so not worth mentioning. There was some horrible movies. Night Patrol, Supergirl came out this year.
Supergirl, in defense of the movie, probably, even with the Supergirl TV series, I think Helen Slater probably was the best Supergirl that they were ever going to get.
Just still find it funny. She plays the mom on that series.
Yes, I know. And I think she was
Dean Cain.
She was probably the best Supergirl they're ever going to get. I'm going to let you all in on a little secret here. I saw that movie many, many times.
Well, there were reasons to see that movie.
No,
none
not
of
the
them.
reasons you're thinking of, my friend. It was a stable at our house. I'll just put it that way.
Well, the last movie I want to mention, and it's a great movie to end on, because any movie with Tom Selleck's worth ending on. and honestly, probably should have been in the running for our sci-fi movies.
Runaway.
Is Runaway with
I
Tom
knew that was
Selleck.
coming. Runaway, Tom Selleck, and Gene Simmons.
What it deals with in that movie, the advent of technology outpacing laws or the government's ability to respond to the technology, is just, it's very similar to what we're dealing with today, although obviously not heat-seeking bullets from a gun, but
Heat-seeking bullets from a gun or little tiny spider robots that run around and inject you with acid.
To be
Yeah.
fair, we do have the tiny little spider robots.
Yeah,
It's the
but they
acid.
don't
It's
inject
the
you with
acid
acid.
part we got a problem.
what we never realized is that there were far worse things that could be done
True.
with
Yeah.
technology to
Yeah.
the world in mass.
And I do have one thing I want to point out. Technically, we actually can have spider robots that inject you with acid. It's just got to be the bad trip kind of acid, not the burning acid.
But if you haven't seen Runaway, out of all the movies we have mentioned today, I'd rather you ignore all of them and go see Runaway.
And if you want to see another
Ignore all of
Tom
them and go
Selleck
see
movie?
Tom Selleck.
If you want to see another Tom Selleck movie, I don't remember the year that it came out, but Quickly Down Under.
Oh, such a wonderful movie. That had been in the 90s, though.
So,
92,
you know,
93.
just saying.
It's-
Joe and I have a lot in common when it comes to favorite actors, favorite actresses, things of that nature. And unfortunately, one of our favorite actors hasn't had a role in quite some time other than a television series.
Man, he went through 6 television series in like 5 years. And to give him credit, he's in one now that's very famous and making it. He's just not the lead.
Yeah, and I'm not particularly fond of this.
And I don't care for it. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I don't like dream sequences or things that mess with what actual reality is.
Yeah. Drug sequences.
Yeah, I
things
just
of
don't
that
care
nature.
for them because I don't. I tell you what, I don't care for. I don't care for unreliable narrators.
Yeah.
That's my least favorite way to have plot twists.
In
And
case you're wondering what we're talking about,
yeah.
Mr. Robot.
Mr. Robot, and that whole series is an unreliable narrator, and I just it's not something I enjoy. But and who we're talking about is Chris Slater,
Yeah.
and Christian Slater is, I think,
Which, in my personal opinion, Heathers was one of his better roles.
to me he will always be a comedian, and Cuffs was one of my favorites.
Cuffs was fantastic, and what was the one with him as a pirate radio DJ that was a young kid?
What was that? I love that one. Where the serial killer, whatever, calls in, or
You know who knows?
I'm Rubinos.
I cannot
Or
remember
Google
the name.
knows.
It left me. Well, if I'm allowed to freeze up here because Ken Jennings' favorite actor was Jeff Goldblum, and when he first met him, I remember it was on Leno or Conan 1. He met him. He looks at Jeff Goldblum and says, "Man, I'm your biggest fan." He's like, "Really?" And he quotes a quote of Goldblum's from a movie. He goes, "What movie was that from?" And Kenny froze. and this is the dude who was at the time the all-time winning Jeopardy champion.
Yeah, and the funny part about it is...
But he was starstruck and just couldn't answer.
Okay, so the Christian Slater movie was from when?
I don't remember when it was. What do we got listing for him? Going
90s.
back
no
into
later than 95.
No later than 95, probably.
Okay, that narrows it down. Murder in the First, Broken Arrow, Man of Mystery.
Backwards.
Yeah, we're going to go further.
Further back then.
Much further back than Broken Arrow. You don't look at 90. Then Broken Arrow was his foray into action movies.
Which didn't...
I disagree. He was
Do
in Prince of
bad.
Thieves. Will Scarlet.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
The Wizard, Tales from the Dark Side. Anyways, we're getting off topic. We'll deal with this later.
We'll find it later.
Yeah.
We'll get to that year because it will
But
be
anyway.
mentioned.
Of course it will.
Of course it will.
We hadn't had a year with Christian Slater in it yet.
Not one that actually got mentioned.
No.
But anyway, so that is Hindsight Media.
Hindsight Cinema.
Cinema.
I've already done one where I labeled our thing in the intro for when we did comic books. I called it the pull list, I called it the long box, and it's the pull list, or it's the pull list, and I called it the long box. Which, by the way, we haven't done one of those in months either, so we're gonna have to do one of those.
pretty soon.
Which possibly will be our next one.
I think our new recording schedule that I've got planned will mean we're putting out more often.
Yeah,
Which is fine.
but yeah, like.
But that's our Hindsight Cinema, and that was year 1984. Next year we might look into the 90s. We'll see.
Next year he means the next year we hit, not wait until
The next year.
This is not an annual thing.
podcast.
Yeah, it's going to be a little more
And
frequent.
if you have a year you want us to look at, please send us a message and let us know.
As long as it's not
Yeah.
the 1960s, because nobody needs to go back to the 60s, right, Gary?
Yeah.
I'm the only one that would know anything from there, so what can I say?
Well, we're looking at it from our point of view, and me and Joe agree.
Yeah.
No one needs to go back to the 60s.
But if you're picking us apart, please forgive the Mel Brooks mistake. You'll know what I'm talking about. But until next time, I'm Joel Prevett.
Gary?
And I'm John.